All right. Hello, everybody. Today I am going to be talking about bodybuilding men and what the things that you don't see. So it's going to be quite an interesting topic for the day. So the reason why I really wanted to talk about this today is because there's a lot of bodybuilding men in the community, and we don't really talk about that. We don't really talk about what kind of health issues they might face. Another reason why I really wanted to talk about this is because, and also because I was curious to know what health issues do they face. The reason why I also wanted to talk about this is because a lot of times we do talk about women and body image issues and women's eating disorder and body image, but we don't talk about the men's side of things. And so I was really curious about this. And then I also wanted to know, are they as tough as they look? They are huge. You've seen them before. They are, it takes an incredible amount of patience, discipline, and work to get the kind of bodies that they get. And so, we're going to be talking about all of it today. So now a little bit about the history. I can pull up my notes, maybe. Maybe not. Okay. So, sorry about that. So, okay, we're going to be talking a little bit about the history. So over here on this top left, this is the first bodybuilder ever, pretty much. And so bodybuilding eventually started in the 1990s and, in the 1890s, and this is Eugene Sandow. So he's the one that kind of started this whole movement going on. And you can see the difference here with all these different men, how it's progressed over since that time. In this time period, though, this body was considered weird. It was different and nobody really liked it. They thought it was kind of freaky and that you had to have certain genetics in order to look like that. But also people were very entertained by the idea. So essentially, weight training started out as a means for strength and power in the Egyptian and Greek society in those times. So that's kind of where it all started. In Greek culture, you've seen like all the statues, and a lot of Greek culture, they believe in, the Greek goddesses and gods and things like that. Not that I'm necessarily promoting that thinking, but I'm just saying they valued the big, strong, muscular type of body physique because it promotes power, right? So the original goal of weightlifting soon became entertainment in Europe in the 19th century, and it wasn't about the body, but to show intense strength. So essentially, it was like the powerlifting that you see in strongman. They were more big, though, and it was an entertaining thing for them. They would sell out shows and stuff like that in Europe, because it was entertaining to see these men lifting up crazy things like big giant rocks and like just normal things. It wasn't like actual barbells or anything like that yet, but that was an entertaining thing for them. So yeah, and it was all about strength. It wasn't really about how good he looked or anything like that. So then bodybuilding industry began to take storm when Sandow came to America as the strongest man. He was basically responsible for what we see as barbells and dumbbells today. So he essentially created those because it's not exactly convenient to be carrying around rocks and things. You could hurt yourself. So this earned him the big bucks, obviously. With that said, also, he had a fatal brain hemorrhage trying to pull his car out from a ditch. Still trying to be the best that he could be. He was trying to show off, most likely, and it didn't really turn out very well for him because he was trying to push past the limits. There's always a limit to everything that you do, right? So then, just a little bit more history still. The first bodybuilding contest was held in 1891 by Eugene Sandow in the UK. Sandow looked for symmetry when he was looking at bodybuilders. He was not just looking at just size. but even development, because that meant that you knew exactly how to train. You didn't have any, what is the word, muscle, you guys know what I'm talking about, the muscle imbalances. Another man who wanted to also become popular and get into some of this cash money was Bernard McFadden, who created something called Physical Culture. He also created a pretty offensive magazine called Physical Culture, which we'll see in the next slide. This was in about 1921. And then obviously over here is going to be Lee Haney, who is the 8-time world champion for bodybuilding. He has won like 8 executive Mr. Olympias in the past years. And then this right here is Ronnie Coleman, which I'm sure a lot of you have heard. And then obviously Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I did make sure that these pictures were kind of, appropriate for this presentation. And okay, so this is the Physical Culture magazine. So as you can already tell right off the bat, it's kind of offensive. I'm not exactly sure when this article was put out, but basically it is body subjectification, and they focus on physical improvement here at the end, and then what it's like to be skinny versus muscular. So notice how they are saying that he is a man now because he isn't skinny, but rather he can stand up for himself thanks to his muscles. It's almost as if they are implying that skinny men cannot stand up for themselves or fight back because they are smaller, which is not always true. Next, because they can't fight, it makes them less manly. And so that's kind of, I almost feel like that is kind of the problem, and like where it starts to create some of those big, like, oh my gosh, I need to work out every single day, which we will be talking about later today or later in the presentation. Because they can't fight, it makes them less manly. And the 30s was also when bodybuilding really became huge, 1930s, I believe, during this time. And it's when weightlifting, being a beach buff, and gyms were very popular. In 1940, Mr. America became popular, and this was all about the physical body improvement. So you had to look a certain way, certain amount of body fat percentage on you, and then a certain amount of muscle as well. There was also eventually other contests called like Mr. Universe, I'm sure you've heard of it, Mr. Olympia, and then the IFBB later as well. And then in the 60s, which we'll talk about a little bit more later in this presentation, not the 60s, but like anabolic steroids, that's when they started to become a little bit more popular. They continued to grow in popularity, and the prize money for these shows just kept getting bigger and bigger and more and higher for the bodybuilding competitions, and it became more about size than it did about symmetry, which is why Eugene created the contest, because it's very difficult to make sure that your muscles are evened, right? It's really cool. So in this article that I found all this information, they say that growth hormones, steroids, and insulin became popular in the 80s just to get bigger, just to win this prize money that everybody was doing. It showed, I don't know, it showed a different kind of culture. It showed manliness, right? That's what they consider to be manly according to this magazine. So ultimately, there's a lot of history behind bodybuilding and why it is popular. It continues to be popular today, but it has, with all the different contests that we see today, but does it have a cost? And we will talk about that. So I don't know if you were able to look at any of this, this magazine here, but the guy is just so mean, like, shut up, you bag of bones. And then the guy's like, I've had enough. I don't want to be skinny anymore. I'm going to get his free book, whatever, there you go. They're already selling, your dream and showing that you can have the girl and beat the man. And it's kind of like that superhero complex. And then he magically builds his muscles super fast, apparently. And then he beats up the guy that beat him up before. And then in the last clip is the most important, I think, because of this class and talking about masculinities and stuff. Oh, Joe, you are a real He-Man after all. What a man. He used to be so skinny. So just thought that was interesting. All right, so the heart of the presentation, body dysmorphia and eating disorders. Yay, not really, but this is a big talk, and I don't really hear it being talked about too much among men. So, because I think it's because it's kind of embarrassing, but let's talk about it. So, what is body dysmorphia? Well, in a sense, it is basically obsession. It's also bigorexia, also called bigorexia. It involves abnormal eating, substance abuse, and dissatisfaction with appearance or body image issues. So, what is the exact definition of body dysmorphia? Body dysmorphia is essentially muscle dysmorphia that, certain individuals obsess about being inadequately muscular, and then they have compulsions, which include spending hours in the gym, squandering excessive amount of money on ineffectual sports supplements, and abnormal eating patterns, or even substance abuse. So essentially, people, men especially, it's essentially the opposite of anorexia, in that a person doesn't fear being fat, they fear being small. So they need to have the biggest, bestest muscles, and it's essentially like a mental thing. It's a mental disorder. So that's why it is categorized as, and also called bigorexia, because they're actually huge, and they're very muscular and fit, maybe not that healthy, but they are very fit looking and they have a lot of muscle, but they don't see that. They just see that they're small. They can't see it any other way, and so they need to get some therapy to help with that. And I just wanted to mention too that it is also very common, mostly in bodybuilders, but it's common in anybody. That it's more prevalent, I think, among men though, because they want to be bigger, they want to have more muscle, and it's more prevalent among the bodybuilding community because of the constant subjectification that you're getting on your body, people judging how you look, you comparing yourself to others. Like it's definitely a triggering culture. So more body image and mental health. So a lot of times bodybuilders will have problems with their social relationships because of bigorexia or body dysmorphia. They also have mental health problems such as depression and suicide. And in one of the studies that I read in depth, one man said that he literally didn't have time for his friends. He didn't know that he had body dysmorphia, by the way, but they said that he had all of the key elements that somebody would have, but he did admit that he had eating disorders and things like that in the past. So he said he didn't have time for his friends, and he hated undressing or having intimate relationships with his girlfriend because he can't stop thinking about the gym or his body. So as they're having an intimate moment, he is just thinking about when the next time he can go to the gym is. And he's critical about his nutrition, critical about his training. And he said that he would get upset when he couldn't go to the gym. If there was something that maybe if all the equipment was taken, he would actually get really mad. He also mentioned that he hated the way he looked on the inside, even though he might have been bigger and maybe better looking than some of the other guys. But basically they all pretty much just put everything on hold so that way they can work out. They don't really have a life. They make the gym their life. Sometimes they will skip work. Sometimes they'll probably skip school and do things like that just so that way they can go to the gym and work out. They have basically, the reverse anorexia. And then this leads to really poor body image, obviously, and then poor social health, which we know is very critical to our overall well-being, feeling like we belong and that we have a sense of purpose. Not to mention the use of anabolic steroids. Both situations can lead to depression and even suicide because, and we'll talk about steroids in a little bit, but essentially, it's affecting their mental health, right? So of course it's going to make them a little bit more sad. It's going to make them feel like they're not good enough, like they're not worth anything, right? That's really sad. And they also fear being intimate or to be with a partner, which is really sad. So next, what causes body dysmorphia? So first of all, we got to talk about advertising. There is a lot more advertising than we might know. I personally am not a man, so I could not tell you how much of it I see, because a lot of advertising and ads that are specifically targeted to me, for example, on the internet are women based or feminine based, but I understand and I have seen men who are extremely, extremely fit, photoshopped, whatever, on pictures, and it's being targeted to men. And it's very, very similar to what is going on with women and the kind of subjectification that women have as well. There's societal body standards, what makes you a man, what doesn't, and then they might be doing this to mask insecurities from himself or from women, and then they could also could have been caused by victimization. So another reason why body dysmorphia happens is because of the social body standards, and then they want to just mask their own insecurities, and so they focus on their body a lot more. So I wanted to talk about this could have been caused by victimization as a child. I read a study about this, and it said that as a result of victimization, well, it didn't say this, but I'm saying this, but this is what it said about, I'm paraphrasing here. As a result of victimization as children, some children may be more prone to muscle dysmorphic tendencies when they get older because of the low self-esteem that they got when they were bullied. It's really sad. Okay, so I also wanted to point out, because we're talking mainly about bodybuilding men here, so a lot of it does come from TV as well. I wanted to say one man said that he literally felt so crappy about himself because of the type of huge muscular men he saw on the TV. He felt like he needed to be like them. Okay, so now we're going to talk about steroid use. So steroid use dangers. We all know that they are pretty dangerous, sometimes even illegal. So first, it can cause depression and suicide, increase cholesterol levels, prostate enlargement, baldness, male pattern baldness, acne, hemorrhage, which can be caused by overdosing on steroids. So basically, another thing too is that they might also justify reasons as to why it's okay to use them, kind of like some people do with drugs and sometimes even alcohol. They don't really care what the implications are sometimes, or they're just kind of being a little bit ignorant about them, and they have a lot to say about it. Let me just tell you that right now. They just care about the now instead of the future. So I did actually read a study that was interviewing people that were taking these anabolic steroids and kind of what they thought. So first, we saw all these harmful things. It can also cause depression and anxiety and suicide, because when you stop taking them, they will, I don't know exactly what happens, but it says that they like do something in the brain, so that way you're more depressed and you can become suicidal. Even the guy that I was talking to you guys about in the other slides, maybe it was in the other study. I think it was in this study that I was just talking about. They took it for a period of time, and then they didn't think that they were bad and that there was any health side effects. But the one thing that they did notice was when they stopped taking them, they felt depressed and they didn't know why. Okay, so many bodybuilders or even lay people who take steroids think that they know more about them because they have done certain research, and if they do them in moderation, that they will be fine. This is what a majority of the people said in that study. They also sometimes claim to know more than doctors on the subject of steroids, and they think that people who are against taking steroids are ignorant and unintelligent. There's also a little book floating around called The Anabolic Edge, and it's what a lot of the people, especially the people in this study anyways, the respondents in the studies mentioned that they used to get their knowledge on these steroids. They say to use substances which are used by veterinarians. Yeah. They have side effects, and also that it takes, and the book also says to take a higher dose than is safe. And even with some of the side effects that respondents mentioned, they said that it wasn't that big of a deal and they kind of brushed it off. So that's another thing. So if you're counseling or doing anything with bodybuilders, just know that they don't think that it's bad, and you need to know everything about steroids before you talk to them about it, because a lot of them have tried to talk to their doctors about it and their doctors are like, oh, I don't know, and they don't really want to talk about it. So I think it's definitely important. So next, characteristics and success in society. So first, a lot of the bodybuilders can be, I'm not saying all of them are, but a lot of them are narcissistic. Some might be antisocial. Some think that, you know, they're not good enough, and that can result into overtraining, undereating, kind of like the female athlete triad. And then the use of steroids, body image struggles, social pressures, roid rage, which I'm sure you've heard, and then testosterone can lower as well as a resort to the low body fat, even for men. So I know that even for women, you know, when you have too low body fat, you can lose your menstrual cycle, and that can cause problems to your reproductive health. And so it does it as well for men. So one of the things is that some might feel antisocial if they feel like they are being competed against, as well as they might have body dysmorphia and that they just want to focus on their gym and on the workouts and what they can do to be the best that they can. There's also some social pressures, like being in a bodybuilding gym may lead to more steroid usage. TV ads, social media, magazines were a big one as well, where they felt the social pressure to be the best that they can be. Body dysmorphia or body image issues of not feeling good enough also point out the reason for people to take steroids. Social culture is aggressive and competitive. In order to compete in shows, you have to do what the others are doing, or it wouldn't be fair and you won't win. This is a problem because it can lead to dangerous steroid usage just for a competition, and it could ruin their lives. It's also a very exhaustive process that can be awful for men, but also women too, because women also feel pressured to take steroids. And I think that the thing that's scariest is that it floats around in the gym. This is an example of roid rage. Hopefully it'll play. It should be a certain clip for it. So yeah, that happened. I'm not saying all of them are like this, but it can happen, especially because like they feel like they want to be the best and they work so hard. Can you only imagine just being told you're not good enough? Yeah, it's a terrible, it is a terrible type of, you know, thing to go through. I just can't even imagine. All right, so bodybuilding culture, I'll go over this kind of quickly, but basically, the bodybuilding culture is all about being big, muscular, being tan, taking supplements, taking steroids, eating a super clean diet, being better than everybody else in a competition, and then eating lots of protein and working so hard that you cry. In a sense, basically it is painful and there are zero excuses, because if you're going to be competing against like all these guys that you see up here, you have to do what they do. And what do they do? Most likely, they most likely do steroids, and they most likely tan a lot, and they most likely eat a ton of protein. You have to have a ton of protein in order to make sure that that muscle is being saved, because if you are eating so little, because you have to eat so little in order to keep your body fat this low, this is incredibly low body fat here. I don't even know, probably 3%, maybe, yeah, probably about 3%. That's too low for men. But I'm just saying, you know, it takes a lot of discipline and it takes a lot of work to be that way. And so a lot of them are, you know, just going against each other like that. It's like they all do things that the normal person cannot do. And then here's Arnold drinking his little protein shake here. And then here is another physical culture magazine from the 1947. So remember I said that the bodybuilding culture started in the 30s. So here they are still just trying to, you know, vital, powerful manhood, $1,000 prize, physical preparedness and imperative duty. Sickness is a sin, don't be a sinner. And then weakness is a crime, don't be a criminal. So they, you know, this is kind of where that whole, you can't be weak, this is kind of where it starts, you know, from all this. And they're very hard on themselves too, you know. And then here's some different trends in the bodybuilding community over the years. So this is 1990, 1976, 2016, and then like 2020. That it's just crazy. Like all these, you know, just seeing the veins, and he literally looks like if you were to take off his skin, that is what is there. It's just it's fascinating, but it's also kind of, no offense, I'm not trying to be rude, but it's kind of a little bit gross to me. Just because it's so, it's not normal to see all this, so that's why it's so different. But they don't see it as weird. So anyways, trends in the bodybuilding, so they're just getting bigger. Steroid use is getting way more common, and also common among just the lay public, high school kids, high school boys, regular adults, all that stuff. It's quite scary, actually. And then it can also cause a further body dysmorphia and body image issues among the new generation of young men. So as you can see, there are some huge differences with these men from the 1990s to the 2020. There are even some reports of men who were bodybuilders that have had surgeries because of either dietary or strength reasons. Ronnie Coleman himself has had about 8 surgeries and cannot walk anymore. He has ruined his back. And I think he said in a Joe Rogan podcast, I wasn't able to find it, but he said that literally it's because of how much he would lift, and he would just ruin himself. But anyway, so now I just have some questions for you, just to keep this a little bit more engaging. Do you know anybody who does bodybuilds, and what do they know about steroids, and do they do them? Did you learn something new today? Here are all my references, and I really hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Thank you.